Welcome to another edition of I Am AAPC. Today I have nurse or former nurse Heather Mason with me. Heather, how are you?
I'm well, Alex. How are you?
I am super. Thank you so much for joining me. And as you know, we are here to talk about that journey from nursing to medical coding and the revenue cycle. Would you tell us a little bit about that and how you ended up as a nurse and the path that you've taken since then?
Sure. I'm non-traditional all the way. I was in law school. My grandmother got sick and I changed career fields. So I became a nurse, well, not law school, but right before it. My grandmother got sick. I decided to become a nurse very young. I loved it. Right after graduation, I was in labor and delivery, which is fast-paced and fun when it's fun, but very stressful and has a very high burnout rate. I got married, and I ended up having a child and working 7P to 7A, which I love, night shift. It just didn't work with our family. And I had an opportunity to go to work for an OBGYN office of a physician that I had delivered with for a long time. Um, and I thought it would work better for my schedule, which it did. But because I was so used to the fast pace of a hospital setting, I got bored pretty quickly in the um, office setting. It's a much slower pace. And I had an administrator who noticed that I was a little bored. And so I went from being the nurse to being their surgical coordinator because I understood the hospital side and it was easier for me to work sort of both ends, the office and the scheduling. And then it didn't take long for her to figure out that when there were denials, a nurse could probably help you figure out why they weren't paying it. And this was, very early in the was as my kids say, in the 19s. It was late 19s, early 2000s, and there were coders. There just weren't as it wasn't a thing where I even knew about it actually. And she challenged me and said, "Would you like to go back to school?" And I was like,
Uh,
maybe. You paying for it? And they
yeah.
said, yes, we are. And I said, oh, I love to go to school when other people pay for it. And so I actually took a boot camp course. I took a 1 week, you either know it or you don't, and sat for the exam on that Saturday.
The
Um,
CPC exam.
yes,
Did
yes.
you know anything about AAPC prior to this employer saying, we want you to do this? No.
No, no. I mean, obviously, because I had been in an office setting, we had billers and coders. Um, I don't think we had a certified coder, if I'm remembering correctly, because it was a time when it was you could have them certified, but it was not a thing that everyone was, and you had these um, people who had been billing and coding for like longer than I've been alive. And so they were amazing at it, but they weren't certified because it wasn't a thing. They just naturally had progressed into that role in an office setting. And so I took the course. And as a nurse, I think that it I did have a leg up. I was not, there were three other people taking the course with me that week, and two of them were not nurses. I don't know how they did on the exam. I mean, it's not something that anybody would divulge to me, but I do know that they struggled because that's a lot of information in a little bit of time. I don't even know if they do that anymore. It's been so long. Like I said, I've been certified since, what does this on the wall say? Since September of 2000.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm just looking to say. Um, and after that, my agreement with my employer was that I wouldn't leave for 2 years. And so what I ended up I continued to do surgical coordination for them, but then I also became the person who did all their pre-certs because I could talk to the insurance company that way. I knew the codes because I had learned them, and I was, learning to continue to use them to figure out the best CPT code to put on the pre-authorization form to get the insurance company to pay for it and match it with the correct ICD-9 at the time. Um, and I did that for a while, and then I started to do much more of their denials than anything else. That it was easy for me to teach someone to do the pre-certification, fill out the form and have someone understand sort of this master list of codes. But it's harder to fight the denial, to figure out why they denied it, what they're looking for. And so I used that. And then once again, I was like, okay, I've mastered this. Now what? And I had that same administrator who just always never wanted to see anybody that worked for her kind of stop growing. And even though I outgrew them, I continued. And all the while, I must say, I've never fully given up clinical coding. I mean, clinical nursing. I just haven't. I've stayed PRN at a lot of places because I didn't want to lose my skills. And I'm on a lot of committees and different local organizations for like emergency response and stuff. So I've kind of kept it that way. And then the next opportunity that presented itself to me was my husband's active duty, or I was at the time, Air Force. And an opportunity presented itself for me to work as a contractor for the Department of Defense. Because, get ready for this, Alex, they had a great idea. They're going to get rid of all their coders because they weren't going to need them, because they were implementing software that was going to auto code for them, and they were going to save all this money. But they were going to need a few auditors because they were going to use the 90-10 rule to figure out, look at 10%, make sure the auto code is working correctly. And they were looking for nurses to do it because they were looking for someone who could easily pick up a chart, no matter where it was from, within the hospital or in a health clinic, and just go from there and kind of figure it out. And so the opportunity presented itself, and I worked for the Department of Defense. I started with the Air Force. I ended up with all of them by the time my career with them was over. I stayed with them for quite some time. I traveled all over the world. And then it morphed itself into me saying, you have to bring coders back. This is not working. You have dermatologists doing brain surgery in their office with no anesthesia, if you believe the codes they're reporting. Slight problem. And because the military started to bill other payers like Blue Cross and Aetna for people who had spouses that worked and also had insurance, they had to start following the same rules that everybody else had. Well, so that's when my role morphed into, can you teach these physicians how to code? And I was like, I don't know if I can teach them to code, but I can certainly teach them how to use this software. And so then for the next couple of years, I traveled the world and educated providers. And then I did clinical documentation improvement is basically what it morphed into. And this was before that was a thing too. There was no, that wasn't a thing. We didn't have CDI nurses. It was long ago, but that's what it was. It was really just telling them, if you want to report this code, the documentation must be like this. And you have to, if it, is it written there? Well, then I guess you didn't do it. I did that for several years. The next thing I did was I became an administrator for a practice. Why? I'm not really sure. But because I had both the clinical, it was great because both I had this experience from revenue cycle, coding, billing, things that as a nurse I would have never had. And I married it with the clinical side of me that never went away. So I could sort of manage, as I said, the front and the back of the house. And I did that until my kids graduated from high school. And then I just looked for even more opportunity. And from there, I did a little bit of work I went back to the hospital actually, as a clinical coordinator for a trauma unit. So, and then I sort of got the bug again. But I will tell you, that strangely, and people may not know this, trauma has its own set of codes because they report them for the injuries for an injury system for us to make things safer for the automotive industry for bicycle helmets, all these, they collect all this data. And so when they hired me, they asked me if I knew, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm a coder. Not exactly, because they were looking for someone that's called a CAISS coder, which is I'll have to look it up, but I am certified in that now because I challenged that. But it's totally different. It's really weird, has nothing to do with regular coding. It's all about an injury. But because I knew how to use the CPT book, HCPCS, and ICD-9 and 10, I was familiar with how to use a book in order to get where you want to go following a basic set of rules. So I did that for many years. And then just recently, I went back to school. And
Again.
now, I know, shocker. And now I work for a medical malpractice insurance company as a legal nurse consultant. And I will tell you that my knowledge as a coder still comes in handy because in a malpractice case, you look at the billing, you look at what was billed because you have to make sure you have to make it make sense. So if there's Medicare or Medicaid involved, they do a clawback. They're taking all their stuff back, and so I have to make sure it was coded correctly. Even though what I'm doing is looking at the clinical side. So I'll say I have continued to use it even to this day. I work from here. This is my office. And I work for people who are in another state. But I love it. I love what I do. I love being able to marry both sides, both the my clinical brain and my coding brain, because I will often say this was coded wrong.
Heather,
So
I would imagine that when you started as a nurse, like you're young and you are like, I'm gonna how can I what career path do I want to take? So I'm gonna do nursing. That seems like a good fit. I bet you would have never thought that this is the path where you would end up, right?
absolutely not. I mean, absolutely. I kind of feel it's full circle since I was a poli-sci major in college originally. And so that when that opportunity presented itself and someone said, a university near me had this course and I was like, oh, that's a lot of money. And my employer was like, you want to take it? And I said, maybe. And then when I got the textbooks, I thought, oh my gosh, what did I do? Um, but I passed. I have another certification on my fall.
Yeah.
But I do. I still use some basic knowledge from just the CPC. I mean, just because there's so many now, but my CPC because and I stay up on the rules and not all of them as much as someone who was in it every day, but I am the member development officer for my local chapter. And I use myself as sort of, the welcoming for new people, but for young people in the starting in the career field saying, well, I can't find a job as, a coder, or I have this, apprentice and I'm trying to, what do I have to do to get rid of that? Or how can I, and I just start to explain all of these non-traditional roles that are there. And I often say, take it, take what comes to you. And sometimes you'll end up in a place you never even thought you could see yourself, but the opportunity will be there. You'll get experience, you'll get your name out there, network. I mean, and then you'll end up, I mean, I know so many people from the AAPC world from all over. I mean, from Hawaii to the other side of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's clear that you're a people person,
I
you're
am.
high energy,
I am.
and I just love the energy that you give. It lifts me, Heather. So I have to say this. You talk about being in a position and a manager saying or sensing that you were bored
Mhm.
and through all of this, because do you find yourself in that spot these days because you're not around people, you're in your home office doing your
Yeah.
own thing with your dog?
Yeah, with Boomer. I so I think it's yes and no, right? I love the autonomy, right? I have a great director who trusts me implicitly, gives me assignments, and assumes I'm going to get them done. And I often tell people who've not worked remotely before, if you are not driven and self-driven, I should say, it's not for you because there's nobody here that's going to tell you what to do. The flip side is, yeah, you don't get interaction with people. I will say that my organization meets once a week usually. We use Teams all the time, and so if someone's trying to figure something out, we'll just pop on a Teams call, and we'll do it like this, so we can screen share. I don't know how many screens you have people in front of them, but I have three in front of me. And we'll just pop on a meeting, and so I do feel connected in that way. But I think I'm just used to it. I mean, for lack of a better term, it's been a long time, 2019 really changed the world we live in. I did go back to nursing um, almost full time during COVID because the need was so high. But man, I was tired. And I started to really appreciate having this other side that I could go to know that I didn't have to stay in the clinical world with as hot as the environment was getting, for lack of a better term. Um, but yeah, I am. I love people, and I often gravitate to roles where I can still have interaction with people, even if it's just on the phone or via text or stay in constant email contact to help people in whatever capacity I can. And I think that just goes back to the fact that I'm a nurse. Like
Yeah.
my goal in life is to always help people.
I love it. I love it. We talked a little bit about your your exam preparation, a 1 week boot camp. Boom, that was it. And you're
That's
right
it.
in it. But
Yeah,
I speaking with other nurses and yourself, you have this foundation of anatomy and medical terminology. You know your way around that.
right.
Why? I mean, uh, why do you think you're so successful other than those two things? Because they are an obvious advantage. But why else do you think you succeeded on your first try with such limited training?
Well, I'll say it this way. One thing I always say is I had no idea how hard, like, if someone, I didn't know, right? And like not knowing was almost better. Like I wasn't like worked up. I was like, oh, it's an exam. As a clinician, you get tested on a lot of things. And I thought, oh, 5 hours. Wow, this must be really an exam. Um, but I think that I'm highly organized, and most nurses are because you have to be. It's part of the job. Like as a trauma nurse, when the trauma page comes in and we all go down to the bay, we know where we're supposed to be, and we have our things, and this is what I do, and I follow these rules. And so if you learn to use the books, because that's really what I had to do during that week, was I had to learn where because it's one of those they say in nursing school all the time, when it's an open book exam, you have the answer. You just have to find it. And I'm like, it's easier said than done. But I think that being a nurse and learning that you must be organized, and also being able to multitask. So you're reading the question, you're looking in the book, and you're already deciding, if I don't know it, and then I must, full disclosure, it was on paper. I marked it, and then I came back to it. So I burned through everything that I knew I felt good about. And I also trusted my gut, because I know that when you start that wavering of, is it this? Is it that? I end up picking the wrong answer when I knew the right answer to start with. So I went through as quickly as I could. So obviously I did the med term and other stuff that to me I thought was going to be easy. I did all that up front. And then when I was reading the vignettes and all. I went to stuff I knew. So if it was an area of medicine I was not super comfortable with, I skipped it. Um, and then also, you can't read every word. You have to skim for content. If you are reading that op note, you're going to run out of time. You've got to learn to skim, so you have to kind of learn. And I think as a nurse, you've read enough op notes or you've read enough labs or visit notes that you kind of know where the meat of the information is going to be, and you have to focus on that and then just sort of look at the periphery and feed it in and then get your answer and mark. And if you're not sure, mark it and come back, but answer it. Because I also feel like if you leave it blank and you run out of time, you will fail because you have nothing. So put something, but make a little mark and say, oh, I'm not sure. Let me come back to that. That was honestly, that's how I did it.
I love that. I mean, what great advice. I'm curious because medical coding and the revenue cycle always changing, updates every year or more.
Always. Quarterly.
How, yeah, and the clinical, it's you do your thing. And I don't know the clinical side as well, but
Mhm.
how does that constant change affect you? Do you like it, or do you think that's something a nurse can adapt to, or do maybe they already live it?
Well, so in my opinion, we kind of live that too because medicine is ever evolving. And so the way, if I bet you, I haven't been a labor and delivery nurse in a long time, but I bet you if I went back and tried to do a delivery and follow the rules that are in my head from when I did it, I'd be wrong. There would have been big changes. I mean, even something as simple as, I mean, the way that we do IV infusions and the IVACs. I mean, heck, when I graduated from nursing school, we used a dial, a drip. We didn't always have an IVAC machine, and I am dating myself by even calling it an IVAC. They're not even calling it that anymore. But we didn't always have a machine, and we had to learn to do the drip. So I think that as a nurse, you also are prepared for things to be different. Physicians, you can get three physicians in the room, and you know this about coding. You get three coders in a room. You get three physicians in a room, and you present them the same thing, and they will all come up with something similar, but not exactly the same, and all of them are correct. And as a nurse, you're going to have to acquiesce to whichever of the three you're working with. So that's kind of the way I've looked at it, is that I've never been in anything that isn't going to change. Because if you're part of healthcare, that they always say the only thing you can count on is change.
Yes, yes. The nurses I've spoken with so far, every one of them have these positions in the revenue cycle have kind of just landed in front of them.
Just come.
So what if a nurse watching this
Mhm.
doesn't have that opportunity, what are good positions for them to maybe seek out that would be a good path?
So I worked actually in revenue cycle, in an emergency department because I know that area of medicine. And so I would say that if they have a specialty clinically that they're familiar with, and there's an opportunity sort of in an admin role, they could seek that out because, especially if it has to do with running the business of any kind, whether it's administration or revenue cycle or a combination of both, but learning those things about um, billing and coding, and it gives you that administrative side that maybe nurses don't always have. Um, but I would say seeking out something same but different. So in an area that you're familiar with, but in a role that maybe you're taking a risk on. And I will tell you that a lot of people took a lot of chances on me as much as I took chances on positions. And I truly live by the fake it till you make it. Like, just start swimming. I mean, it's on, what else can you do? Just start
Yeah,
swimming.
yeah,
And nurses are used to being thrown in that too, right? If you're a hospital nurse, you are used to being pulled to float to another floor, or there's a chance that you will be. And when you take me to telemetry, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just swimming. And I was like, so I would just say, just start swimming, just pick something. And also join, if you have the chance, join your local chapter because you're going to meet people who are going to be looking for something and they may not know that they're looking for you because they don't know that a you exists. I describe myself as a unicorn because I am a unicorn. I mean, I'm a nurse that's a coder that did some law school stuff. What? I mean, but I am, and I embrace all of that. And so I say, people don't know they're looking for a unicorn if you don't put the unicorn out there.
Yeah. And if you're a nurse watching this, what Heather's talking about with chapters, AAPC
Oh,
has
I'm sorry.
local chapters. No, you're right. We have local chapters across the country, really across the world.
Yes,
And Heather, what you are an officer at a chapter.
I am. I am the member development officer for Peninsula Professional Coders in Newport News, Virginia.
Okay. And if you Googled AAPC, local chapters, it'd take you to a website where you can find your local chapter. And I would suggest, and Heather, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but if you are just considering this change in careers, attend a meeting, talk to people, get a feel of what it's like and what the community's like.
Oh, absolutely. I would say without a doubt, local chapters welcome non-coders all the time. You don't have to be a coder. And we have often hosted Saturday afternoon social type thing to get more people interested in coming regularly. And also now that we live in this virtual world, you can virtually attend a lot of meetings. In fact, I'm going to virtually attend another chapter's meeting because I'm interested in the topic. And that's the other thing. You can use the AAPC website to topic search to find things. And it's just a great resource. It's just like nursing societies. I still belong to the Trauma Nurse Society, and I still get email and still participate in some of that stuff to sort of keep, I don't know, my feet wet for lack of a better term. So just come over and see what it's about, see if there's something that sort of piques your interest. And now that the AAPC has a lot of certifications, it there are a lot of different areas that may interest you, especially coming from as a clinician.
And this might sound scary to someone even considering this change in careers, but there, I'm surprised with how many clinicians speak at local chapters and they
Oh yeah,
connect those things together. Um, and if you're watching and you have worked in OB and labor and delivery or whatever that specialty may be, you could be a presenter and sharing your knowledge to all of these
absolutely.
coders.
Oh, absolutely. The the non-clinician coder, which is the majority of coders, love a clinician to come and talk to them, especially a specialty. So, I could name tons of them, orthopedics, OBGYN, I mean, just any specialty, because there is so much clinical knowledge that they are longing for because they're reading these op notes or these visit notes and they're trying to make heads or tails of something and they would love to be able to pick the brain of a clinician.
Yes, I love it. Okay, Heather, we're going to switch gears a little bit. Why do you serve as a chapter officer? You're very busy. Why throw that into the mix?
Um, I come from a really great chapter. I've been a member for a long, long time. I've resisted being an officer probably as long as they would let me. Um, but then I saw the need. I saw that, fresh faces, fresh ideas, um, learning from what I had experienced in the chapter and things that I thought we could maybe do different and opportunities I could continue to grow, not just me, but other people in this area. And it's not that much of a commitment, honestly. I know it sounds like a lot, but we just work together. we have, these tasks that we have to complete and we divvy up the work. And even though I'm just the member development officer and I don't have as much responsibility as, say, our president does, we still try to break it up. We still try to, the attendance that people don't understand how hard it is and that we have to manually put it in. Um, we break up all the things. And I think that they did a lot for me when I was a very green to this side of my work. And so I'm giving back. Like I waited a long time to do it. And, you know, I miss meeting in person. We still have, we have to have some in person and I love them. But now we're all like this.
Yeah, virtual. How about AAPC conferences?
So much fun. Um, so a great opportunity to like do two for one. They're usually in a great area. This year is Dallas. Um, and my son lives in Austin. So I'm like,
Perfect.
but usually a great opportunity for you to see a place and maybe, we have had them in the same place more than once, but this year, the opportunity was, to combine it with a trip with your family and have this, but it just gives you an opportunity to meet so many different people who have so many different roles. You're not going to see just traditional coders or just traditional auditors or gosh, there's just so much. And you can meet vendors, which might give you an opportunity for work or just stuff. I have some vendor stuff around here. um you will meet national advisory board people. You'll Jackie will be there. She'll say she's not, but she's gonna be. Um and Alex will be there. It just gives you an opportunity to sort of, this big world feels really small to me. It feels like I go to these nursing conferences and it's the same thing. I'm keeping my family in there and I'm growing and I'm learning. And it's fun. I mean, there's games and there's socializing but the breakout sessions are just amazing. They always have really good speakers. And for us as a chapter, it's given us the opportunity to meet those speakers. And because we do this virtually more than not, we're able to have those speakers speak for us locally. So even people who weren't able to attend, we can bring in that expert that we listen to that we're like, oh my gosh, I would love to share this with more people. And we've done the same thing. And then we've been speakers at theirs. And so it just kind of, again, I just think it's a great
Yeah.
opportunity to make the world feel so much smaller.
Well, I love you covered networking, which is so huge, and I spoke with today a member who found a new position from a connection they made at HealthCon, our national conference.
Mhm.
Uh, but how about on the sessions? Can you recall a session because you work in such a unique
I am.
space?
Mhm.
Tell me about a session that you thought, oh wow, I did not expect this to be here. I am getting a lot out of this.
I did not expect to be able to attend sessions that were so specific. Um, I attended them just because it was something different. Like it was like I was like, oh wow, I don't really know a lot about skin grafts, and I guess it's difficult to explain, but if you go to a national conference, your day, like you figure out your schedule and what you're going to attend. And sometimes you have a space where there's maybe not something that you're like dying to go to, but it was so different and so unique. And I thought I would understand because I'm a nurse. Oh no. I learned so much. And it was a coder. She just knew that area so well from just doing it that she had all this knowledge from a provider that she worked for and still does. And she shared all of that. And it just really opened my eyes to thinking, wow, even non-clinicians can have more clinical knowledge than you could ever think about because they do that specific thing. I just thought that was really, that was a very unique session. And I really didn't think about how they got some of this grafting material. And it was just really a unique thing. Something that again, I just had a break in some sessions and was like, I don't want to do nothing. So I'll go in here.
Awesome.
Or if
Awesome.
you're a room monitor, sometimes you're just sitting there and you're listening and learning too.
That's right. That's right. I love it. Okay, so to conclude, Heather, you've shared so much. Would you just speak to the nurses that may be watching, and what would you tell them about making the career change from nursing to medical coding?
I would say that if you're even considering a career change, it's a great opportunity to marry the knowledge you have. You're not going to stop using all that you've worked so hard in nursing school and then in your clinical application. You're not going to lose that. You're actually going to add to it. It's going to be, additional, and it's going to make you more marketable if you're trying to make a switch. I would say if you're considering it, take a chance. There are a lot of certifications that you could you don't have to do you don't have to do just one. There's a bunch. And I think that it could really give you an opportunity to have some autonomy in your career path. I mean, it's certainly given me autonomy I would never have in a hospital or in a office setting.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm sure that your story will inspire other nurses to take this path if they haven't had a job just land in front of them like you and so many others have.
I mean, we're just in the right place at the right time. We don't, and again, I think it goes back to Alex. We always want to help, and so we end up in a position doing something and something happens and they need someone, anyone, a body to help, and we happen to be there. And then when they see that we can do it, the position just comes to us.
Yeah. And one road leads to another and to another, as it does with not only nurses, but I think so many coders, they
Oh,
start out
yes.
thinking I'm just going to code, but then they
Mm-hmm.
end up as an auditor or compliance manager or educator. There's so many
Educator.
opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
So, all
Yeah.
right. Well, Heather, thanks so much for sharing your story. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Alex.